Hello, class. This week we are going to be talking about the material that we're learning, as well as we're going to start off by talking about the PowerPoint presentation that you'll be doing for your capstone assignment. I thought I would start talking about it now because I'm sure some of you are already getting anxious about that next step. So as we are going to be talking about the capstone, the whole idea of this capstone is you're going to be basically like a presenter who is educating a group of people about a specific topic in what we've learned in human growth and development. Now, this is meant to be a PowerPoint presentation. That is what you're going to submit. You get to pick the topic, and it has to be something that we've covered in human growth development. So you can hone in on a stage. You could do something like, let's say, for people who are caretakers for aging adults. What would be some things that they would need to know or understand that better help them to take care of those people? You could do something specifically for a faith community, let's say parents. So maybe Christian parents, and as children are coming into adolescence and learning about their bodies and puberty and all those kinds of things. You could do something on younger children, for example, and maybe be to educators and talking about cognitive development. You could pick something of that nature. I hope that kind of helps you. And you're going to educate them on whatever that topic is. You are going to have to use some peer review articles, 10, and then provide at least 5 recommendations for improving or addressing the developmental issue. And then explore developmental issues through the lens of scripture, so biblical perspective, and describe how the developmental issues would be expressed if a client was presented this in therapy. So you will see here the grading criteria for each one of these sections, okay? The rubrics are great. It breaks it down for you, and that's how I will be grading your presentation. Also, just so you know, the capstone is due week 8, day 3, which is December 18th. That is a Wednesday, and the reason it's due then is because we have to submit all the grades on the 23rd. So I hope this is helpful to you, and you are able to gain a better understanding of what is expected of you for this part of your grade. If you have any further questions about it, you can always email me at thoudergy@calbaptist.edu, and then we can I can answer any questions that you may have. But yes, you have. So this week is week 7. Then you have the capstone due. If you get it due turned in early, great. There's nothing that's going to count against you in so doing, because you also have an exam due that week as well. So I'm talking about chapter 13 right now from our text, and we're talking about influences on adult development and stability. So there should be some level of, as people age, there's some level of maturing that happens. Sometimes in women that happens a little faster than men. But there is some level of maturing that happens. And one of the areas we'll see this is in social maturity. So we're able to be maybe more aware of ourselves, how we are affecting the people around us, maybe what's appropriate, how appropriate behavior, what is not so appropriate behavior. We will also have there'll be individual differences amongst people. Those are the things that we will start to see as people age and are getting into more of a adulthood area. So behavior traits in correlation with adult personality. So emotionality is, the intensity of mood, how quickly are we able to calm down, control, self-regulation, attention and persistence, surgency, activity level, approach, avoidance, sociability. Early temperament traits predict later personality traits. So maybe as you see your kid or see a child, let's say, not handle anger well, this might be something that then becomes majorly problematic as they age. We see this in adolescence for kids with major behavior issues. We start to then have oppositional defiance, then conduct disorder. Sometimes that can morph into larger issues in adulthood. And, sometimes that is due to something that is genetic, right? Like there's genetic conditions that can cause some behavioral issues, or mental health diagnoses that like rear their ugly heads, unfortunately, in early adulthood, like schizophrenia, things of that nature. Kids have psychotic breaks. in that college age range. So that is something that can happen. And so these are things that we're going to be looking for. And, again, how one is raised and nurtured is going to affect too how one then develops and their personality develops. How certain behavior is nurtured or not nurtured could be, again, cause problems, in the future. Even overly accommodating children, I think parents have the best of intentions, but when you overly accommodate someone, we can then cause a level of them being enabled, so they feel like they can't be responsible for themselves or they can't do for themselves. And that's where we see a lot of failure to launch these days, or where they're so enabled that then there's a lot of entitlement, like people need to do this for me, I don't have to do anything for myself, those kinds of things. I think it can go one of two ways. And so that's some things that we have to really look at as parents on how we're treating our children, because that does affect them as adults, and it does affect them as they enter into adulthood and their own relationships and potentially their own parenthood journey. And this is how we have now created these grown-ups to act and behave, which is majorly problematic, not to mention then they have children and then they do the same things, and it's just not good. Okay. So increasing children's anxiety from 1952 to 1993, growing up in a world with more physical, psychological threats, steady decline in trust linked to economic change and inequality. These are some things that they've seen over time. Social hierarchy, lower status, poorer life outcomes can affect how one reacts in social situations, can affect how one perceives the world, how they go into adulthood. That's where the psychology and the sociology of things, when you're looking at it from a socio-economic, a socio-behavioral level, we see all these different things that affect how one person behaves, like again, their environment. There could be a cultural implication that's on things, whether someone's a first generation American, that can affect things. So we're coming from an immigrant family, that can affect things. Poverty level can affect things. You got to have a faith component that can affect things. All these things that affect adult development. And I think even though we have a lot of things that can make our life easier, there's a lot of things that make it more complicated, and it's not as simple as it used to be. I think people say that all the time, like life's not as simple as it used to be. And there's just a lot more put on people to do or to accomplish or to achieve, and it creates more stress and all those kinds of things. Okay. Key developmental task of midlife. So marriage, right? That's a developmental step. Marriage associated with greater happiness, lower rates of mental, physical illness, and drug and alcohol abuse. Committed relationships between gay and lesbian adults. Stability depends on same factors as heterosexual couples, and as successful at parenting as heterosexual couples. Parenting is parenting. It's stressful, but there is some level of there is more satisfaction, right, in life when you're in a committed relationship with someone. And that is, I think, very interesting to see that when I think our world and our culture wants to make it seem like, it's so much more fun to be out and about. And I talk to people all the time who are in the dating arena, and they talk about how hard it is and how difficult it is and how draining it is. And I think when you're in a healthy, loving, committed relationship, there's a level of companionship, partnership, not feeling alone. Not to say you can't feel alone in a relationship, you very much can, but I'm talking about a healthy relationship. And so those are things that are interesting. And when we're talking about going into adulthood, into middle adulthood, things of that nature. So the family life cycle, you got the mate selection. So you pick your partner, you got the commitment, you got marriage, parenting, launching children, grandparenting, so on and so forth. And then you get the generations and the legacy potentially. Marriage and its discontents, 40 to 50% of marriages end in divorce, which is very sad. 45% drop in standard of living for women after a divorce. Wow, that's pretty significant. Children affected often have emotional and behavioral problems. Again, I think a lot of people go into marriage obviously not hoping for divorce, but divorce happens. This is where our job comes in real as a big job as marriage and family therapists, as we're helping people get to the other side, hopefully, and helping them to see that that they can work through hard things. Sometimes there's a lot of problems that have built up over time, and it's just gotten so bad that it seems really hard to dig themselves out. I believe it takes two to make a relationship work, and even if there's been infidelity or things of that nature, it's not like a relationship's perfect and then an infidelity happens. Usually there's a lot of things building up to that point, but it's really hard. I think a lot of times couples come into our offices where they're already in a forest fire situation and they needed to come when we had a reasonable, maintainable fire. And that's when it's already a forest fire and it's burning and someone's already out the door. It's really hard to come back from that. If you're really interested in working with couples, there's a lot of great extra resources out there for you to get trained in to help you specialize maybe in working with couples. There's emotional focus therapy that's great. There's a book called Hold Me Tight, great book, talks about emotional focus therapy. But there's options out there if you're a future clinician that's like really interested in working with that population, maybe because you had your own positive experience on how a marriage therapist helped save your marriage, right? But anyways, this will be stuff that comes into your office 100%. So the hypothesis about why marriages succeed or fail: disillusionment model, overly romantic idealization. This happens a lot with couples. They have an idea or expectations on how they think it could be. Oftentimes those aren't communicated very well. People are usually very disappointed or bothered, and this is something that happens often with people. And so this is something to be made aware of. Maintenance: use cognitive strategies to maintain positive view. Social exchange: cost of chronic conflict, and this wears on people. Oftentimes we'll see people who maybe have constant conflict in a relationship. Maybe they stay married until the kids are out of the house, that kind of thing. And oftentimes our world is so kid-centered that we forget that if we don't have a relationship, we don't have a family. Like, we don't have, if we lose sight of who we are as a married couple, like, what's left? Your kids are only going to be with you for so long, in theory. We hope they're only going to be with us so long, and then they hopefully move on and have their own lives. And if we lose sight of the couple, then we are losing sight of many years that you have afterwards. And so those are things to be mindful of as a clinician and as you see people, because this is something that happens often with couples. There's a lot of history that comes into a relationship, whether that be from parents, previous relationships, previous marriages, and that stuff can really come back to bite us if we aren't dealing with it. We talk about generational curses. I never wanted to marry someone like this person in my life, and here I am in the same situation, married to the same exact type of person. We try to recreate happy endings that we never saw, and in that, recreating the same story. And so we have to be very conscientious of that. That's why doing our own personal work before marriage is really good. This is why being aware of doing your own personal work while being married is really good. So you can change those generational curses, so you can change the behavior to have different outcomes. When we want different outcomes, we have to do something different. And oftentimes we're in a cycle or a pattern and we can't break out of it. And that's where an outside person like a clinician can come in and help break the cycle. Okay. Really important, really powerful. Keeping love alive. Love does not stay alive on its own, let me tell you. And so, there's a lot of great people out there. Gottman is one of them. And so marriage is one of those things you have to keep working at. Romance doesn't just happen. Okay. You have to be intentional about it. We have to be aware, there's the 4 horsemen. again, we have to make the couple the priority. Being able to be able to have hard conversations, spend time together, do things that are fun together, but also just be on the same page, I think is so important. But again, making the relationship a priority is huge, especially as you add more to the family. Once you get kids in the situation, it's a different dynamic. But making sure that the couple keeps themselves as a priority is really important and can be very difficult with how busy life gets. But I learned something today talking about urgency versus what's important. And a lot of times we're put in urgent situations because we didn't take care of the things that were important. Like if we don't take care of the oil change, and then the car is burning, the engine is burning, then we have an urgent problem. But if we had taken care of the oil changes, regularly, we wouldn't be in that situation. And I think there's a lot of maintenance in marriage that if we stay like we have our maintenance checks, right? We have our oil changes regularly, then we aren't going to get to these huge issues where it's like, if we don't deal with this, we're in a major situation. And that's a lot of things in life, right? We put things off. I'll do it later. I'll take care of it later. We do that with our health. We do that with our mental health. We do that with our emotional well-being. We do that with our spiritual well-being. We put it off until we're in a crisis. And, one way we can avoid those crises is by taking care of things as they come. And that's the same with a marriage. Okay. And it might be silly date night, blah, blah, blah. Like all that stuff may seem silly. However, it's not silly when you're able to stay married, right? And have a pretty enjoyable marriage, not just be married, but like actually like each other, right? Okay. So, desire, more characteristic of young adults, right? We're in love. We have all the butterflies, all the happy feelings. So accomplishment, more characteristic of middle adults. Child rearing, you got the parental challenges, of each station of life. Like right now I'm in a couple, but you got baby stage, newborn stage, really hard, very exhausting. But as kids evolve and get bigger and grow, the problems just change, right? And even some parents I've talked to, when we talk about adulthood, your kids get to adulthood, and you could feel like, wow, I feel so great about that. They're adults, but now they're making decisions you have zero control over. And so that just is a whole different level of letting go and just watching from the sidelines. And we hope, if we've done a good job raising them and they've made good choices and made great decisions, you're not super nervous about that, but it is a little scary, right? They get credit cards, or they're picking their own partners, or they make big moves in their lives, or job changes, or whatever, and it could be a little overwhelming and a little scary. And that's when we as parents, it's like, I was concerned when maybe you weren't walking when I thought you should, but now it's like, wow, you're making this big decision to move really far away from me. This is really hard. And so this is the kind of stuff where our role changes as our kids get older. And that can affect too, even a relationship, because it's like, where's my identity? All those kinds of stuff, all that kind of stuff. And so anyways, that's part of like the shifting in adulthood, is our roles are changing too, as like what's being required of us and our needs are changing. And so then there's some of those that are in the sandwich generation, which is dual caregiving responsibility for one's aging parents and for adolescents. This is really hard, and caring for aging adults is really hard. And I give those of you who are doing that right now major props, because it's a lot of work and it's really hard to care for our parents, not because we don't want to, but depending on different conditions and things that are going on, it can be very challenging. And the resources and things that like that, and having the help and the support, and if you're having to work, it can be a lot. And so a lot of people are very challenged with doing both, let alone just taking care of aging adults in general, and making hard decisions, especially you don't live close, and in the means and all the things. It can be very, very difficult. And these are things that are going on for our clients, and where we can offer support and guidance and all those things, just to encourage them during that season. And this is, again, a way you can lose touch with your spouse. There's a lot being required of you. Not to say a spouse shouldn't have grace and shouldn't be supportive as well, but if we're not communicating our needs and where we're at, we can really easily lose sight of each other. Like I said, most people on their wedding day don't get married with the intention of getting divorced. But let me tell you, divorce happens. And as we've seen that statistic, it happens quite often. And there's many people, unfortunately, I have known that I never would have thought would have separated or got divorced, and they have. And that's because things happen, life happens, and major pain and trauma happens. And if we're not careful and we're not aware, uh, it happens to the best of us, right? And so, anyways, I hope that's helpful for you guys. I hope that information about the capstone is helpful for you guys. You guys have all done a great job on your blackboards. I will continue reading the ones I need to for this next week, and the grading. And I've just been very impressed with your ability to do great work. You guys have been a great class in that regard. Really, really great, intelligible writing, and very in depth and thorough, which has been great for me to read and to see. So I wish you all the best. Probably will have you in class again, and I hope you have a great holiday.